Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the third round of the Exactcross series, which took place in Heerde in the Netherlands. It was a new race in the series on a quite nice course actually. It was around a lake, kind of similar to Mol, Hofstade, maybe some Lille vibes in there as well. And with me here to discuss that is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Before we dive into the racing, I would like to notify all our listeners that this year we have launched a Substack. You can read a number of articles for free there. We will be switching to paid soon, but we'll still keep pushing a number of articles for free. And it's more insights, more background stories on everything that you like about cyclocross. And you can find a link to that in the description. We are called Inside Cyclocross on there if you just want to search it up yourself. Then into the racing, let's start with the men's race. We had Guus van der Einde taking the best start, but in the first corner there was a pile-up. Well, maybe not a pile-up, just a crash. Felipe Orts was going on the inside 4 wide into that corner. He slid out on the wet grass and crashed into Guus van der Einde. And that was a decisive moment in the race already, because Iserbyt, who had a bad start, could slip down the inside there, quickly take the lead and immediately put pressure on his main rivals. Pim Ronhaar, Laurens Sweeck and Niels van der Putten were all caught behind, so Iserbyt went all out. He took advantage of riders like Mees Hendricks and Corné van Kessel and Barnabas Vos being in between, slowing down the rest, and he just put an immense amount of pressure. Sweeck managed to come across together with Ronhaar in the end, but their return was quite short-lived. Iserbyt attacked and attacked and attacked, and eventually the resistance of Sweeck and Ronhaar broke. Iserbyt, back from suspension, went on to take victory. Sweeck made an all-or-nothing move to come across with 3 laps to go. That turned into nothing, which meant he was burnt out. Ronhaar took second place ahead of Sweeck. Issam, before we talk about Iserbyt and coming back from suspension, let's just talk about his ride today. Yes, he was aided by the fact that there was that crash in the first lap, but it was also a very good performance by him. He was riding professionally, he was constantly putting them under pressure, not making any mistakes. A very, very strong ride on... Well, I don't know. Can we say that this is not a course for him? The days that he struggles in the stand are far behind us, and to be honest, the stand here was not that decisive either.
No, it played somewhat a role, but it wasn't the decision, the maker in a way. I think that he drove very smart today. He read the race quite early on, saw the opportunity and took it with both hands and put all the others under pressure from the start, really. And I think he only let Mees Hendricks overtake him once, and then from there on took again the initiative. And yeah, as you said, I think the days of Iserbyt being very poor in the sand is kind of over. He struggled a little bit in the beginning, but he got his groove. And I think if you have good legs on this course, the sand is not going to be the decision maker, as we said already. So, no, very, very strong race from Iserbyt, and shows that he is in very good form, because this type of courses, it's quite difficult to hold that gap that he was holding and put those guys under pressure. And even when they were closing up, he made sure that they really had to work for that, and that eventually got him the win, of course, by having good legs and putting all the others under pressure. So, very solid race by Iserbyt.
It was a mature ride. It was definitely a step up from his form prior to the suspension. In Beringen, he was on the back foot. In Ardøy, it looked a bit better, but it still wasn't amazing from what I read in the papers about that. So, yeah, this looked much better, and I don't know, I think Iserbyt would have won. I can't say it with 100% confidence, of course, but I think he would have won if it hadn't been for that start crash as well. If that would have been a clean race, it would have been the same result. He was on it, and you saw for a part in the race that Sweeck was managing to close the gap in the sand sections, but then was under pressure on the rest of the course. You saw Iserbyt jumping the barriers, and Sweeck was running them, and then it took all the way until that longer sand section for Sweeck to be able to close that gap, and that's a situation that's never sustainable for a rider on the back foot, and that repeated itself a number of times. Iserbyt took it easy for 1 lap and then finished the job. So I think it was a good ride by Iserbyt. I'm curious to see how he will do tomorrow. Obviously the start field will be a bit better. What do you think about the form level of Laurens Sweeck, though, Issam? This is a good course for him. He likes fast courses. He was good in Essen. Again, not the deepest field. He was lucky to take the win. He was quite bad in Ruddervoorde the next day. No explanation for that result. And today, it also didn't look good. Like, it's fabulous to watch Sweeck ride through the sand. But on the non-sand sections, I don't know.
I don't know either. It didn't look great, I have to say. And I think a good Sweeck would have been able to sit in the wheel of Iserbyt. Would he have won? I don't know. But I definitely feel that he would have at least been able to bridge the gap and sit a little bit more comfortably in the sections that Iserbyt was able to put him under pressure. And I think regarding his form, it's difficult to say if he really made a step from last year. I think he definitely looks a little better, but it's difficult. We need a couple more weeks for sure to see where it will end up eventually. But a race like today was definitely a race where he could have proven ourselves wrong in a way and really fight for victory. But today, despite the fact that he was always kindly up there, you just saw that he was struggling a little bit, and it was basically the sand that was saving him from completely being out of this race. And in the end, he tried that move, like with 3 laps to go, tried to bridge that gap. It looked kind of good, but he paid the price for it. And normally he shouldn't be paying the price the way he did, especially to Ronhaar, who, was having a very strong race. For part of the race, it looked like Sweeck was a little stronger than Ronhaar, and Ronhaar bounced back quite well at the end of it.
I do think that Sweeck is significantly better than last year. Last year was really, really bad. Like, last year he might not have even finished on the podium here with how he was going in some parts of the season. So I do think that he's better, but as you say, maybe last week after Essen, we and other parts of the media were a bit too optimistic, like he's back. I do still think that the point stands that the negative cycle is avoided, which is the big up, because if he hadn't won last week, then the talks would be different now, and whether that's completely fair is kind of irrelevant because it's a matter of fact. Sweeck won, so he, unlike last year, won't have journalists asking him every week, when is your first victory coming? Laurens Sweeck, is this your first season in your career that you're not going to take a win? That's avoided now. But at the same time, I'm curious to see how he will do in Overijse tomorrow. My expectations are quite low. But then I'm quite curious to see how he does at the European Championships next year. Next week when we're in Spain. It's going to be a good course for him. It's like a park cross course. And we should see him do well there. He should be in contention for the medals, because if he isn't, then I think we're going to start to worry a bit more, because that's where he's been placing all his bets on. In the first part of the season, European Championships, my big goal. That's what he's been telling the media. Very short on Niels van der Putten. He finished 4th. In the end, was never really in this race. I think for him, it's more a matter of he always needs a bit of time to warm up into a race, settle into a groove. It's of course not as bad as a rider, let's say Clara Honsinger in the past, but he is a bit of a slow starter. And I don't mean that in the sense that he's not explosive off the line, but he needs a number of laps to really get the going. And he's always good in the final lap of the race. Because of Iserbyt tactics, that vulnerability was exposed today. 4th, maybe not the best day either, but I don't think he has any reason to really worry. Then you already said something about Ronhaar, Issam, but I thought today was a very, very encouraging result for him. We know he's been out with a Lyme disease. We know he crashed into a ravine when he was training in Spain. That's why he started his cross season 2 weeks after Beringen. And here he is, second race, second place on a course that doesn't suit him.
Very strong ride, I have to say. I didn't really expect him to be up there already. I thought that he needed maybe a couple more races to already be on the level that he is today. I think it's encouraging for him, especially, as I said before, the way he finished the race for me was quite encouraging, because it shows that the base is definitely there. The form is very good. There's room for improvement, and you can see it. But it's looking very good, and I think that for him, this was an encouraging race, and I think that the Europeans are maybe a little bit too early for him to do anything there. But I think that it looks very good for what can come in the season when we get courses that maybe suits him a little bit more, the tougher races. And that will be interesting to see what he then. I think then he's going to be a trouble for some, and I think that we will see him more than only this time on the podium and maybe go for victories even. So it's looking good. It's looking encouraging, and it's going to be interesting to see how he will get through the season.
As you say, Ronhaar does best on courses that are muddy and involve climbing, or preferably both. The European Championships are not that, but what do you think about the Koppenberg? Friday? He's not racing tomorrow.
Oh, he's not racing? Oh, yeah, Koppenberg. Well, yeah, that should be a course where he can definitely use that to his advantage. But don't know how the weather forecast is. But even
Dry.
if it's going to be if it's going to be a dry race, it's still tough. So he definitely can use that course to his advantage, I would say, and he should normally be up there for a podium for sure. Victory is definitely possible. So it's gonna be interesting. I think that will be a great test for him to see where he's up at, because today we got a nice course, but Koppenberg is another cook, if we can say it like that.
Starting to sound like Betsema here, but no, I do think that Ronhaar's results are encouraging. I think he can be in podium contention on the Koppenberg. And Thibaut Nys can surprise me tomorrow, but this is what I've been talking about the past few weeks. If you're out of form at the start of the season, the way Ronhaar does it, the way Nieuwenhuis does it, is the way to go if you want to make something from your season. We've seen it time after time again. If you're set back by any way or form, like an injury, an illness, or whatever, take your time to work on your comeback. Don't rush back into competition. We've seen Anna Kay try and do it with a collarbone fracture. That worked horribly. Even if you burn out, like we saw last year, or with Kuhn, or we saw earlier with Iserbyt, trying to put band-aids on the go never really works. This is the way to do it if you want to come back. And for Ronhaar so far, it seems to be working out quite well. Nieuwenhuis hopes to return in the middle of November. He hoped to be back last week, but it took a bit longer to recover from shingles for him. Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Behind the top 4 of Iserbyt, Ronhaar, Sweeck and Van de Putte, we find Felipe Oorts. Mees Hendricks finished 6th. That is what we discussed in the midweek podcast. These are the results that Hendricks needs. It's another good result after 5th place in the Nacht van Woerden. Corné van Kessel was 7th, ahead of Danny van Lierop. Good old Tom Meelse scores a top 10 in a TV cross. He finished 9th, ahead of Daan Soete. Final rider I want to discuss here, Issam, is Oorts. It's a remarkable ride by him. He goes for the Monza turn 1 strategy in turn 1. Takes out Van de Einde. He slips on the grass. I don't think he really knew what he was doing there. Then fights back from 50th to 5th. That's a good race by him.
Yeah, Daniel Kwiat would definitely be jealous of that move, I would say. But, he probably didn't expect it to be that slippery. And would have been a good move if it didn't end up the way he did. But as you said, he recovered quite well from it. He was definitely behind Soete and behind a bunch, really. And he made up, and it's a bit of a shame that he took the hard way to get himself in the top 5. I think that if he didn't have that mishap, didn't have to change bike and have to get really through the field, and you will be held up, especially at the position where he was at one point. I think that he would have been a lot closer to the podium. If he would have been on the podium, I don't really think so, because Sweeck probably would have had enough to keep him behind, but it would have been interesting to say the least, and it's a bit of a shame, but I think still that the form is quite good. We have seen some good racing from him so far this season, and it will come his way eventually in one race where he will get that podium again, and it's looking good for him, and it looks that him joining that new team of Ridley Racing, it did him good.
Before we start talking about the women's race, I would briefly like to discuss the Iserbyt suspension again. I know we've covered it before, but there were some developments. As we said in our midweek podcast, he was allowed to start today. There's 2 versions on why this is. There's one version that says that the team of Paulshaus appealed the suspension and then got an earlier release for Iserbyt, and there's another version that says that the UCI didn't properly communicate the suspension, annex Paulshaus didn't properly interpret the suspension. Matter of fact is that Iserbyt could start in Heerde today, so why still bring up this suspension? Well, I was caught by a page full story in today's edition of Het Laatste Nieuws, the biggest newspaper of Belgium. It was a background story on Iserbyt. And this is something you and I have talked a lot about off the record already, Issam, the communication aspect of this. Paul Sauze very vocal towards the media, being very active, giving multiple interviews, trying to influence public opinion, whereas Kamp has been completely quiet. So the relevance to this paper is that our conclusion before this was Paul Sauze has way better communication, way better PR, way better spin on this, but they don't really matter the fact that they do have that because people don't like Iserbyt. But this week we've seen a bit of a shift in the public attention also in the media, and that kind of all comes together in this article, which is, as said, background on Elie Iserbyt. So let me talk you through the first half of the article. It starts with the moment that Iserbyt was notified of his suspension. It was the morning before Essen. He had already made his sandwiches, he had already cooked his pasta, and he was ready to get in the camper van when he was informed he wasn't allowed to race. Then they start spreading some shade on the UCI. It's weird how the suspension came together. Both parties weren't called by the UCI for any fact release, any version of the story. Kamp never complained about it. And still, the legal department of the UCI decided to suspend Iserbyt, and normally they're not that fast. They continue, it's a suspension that has consequences. Iserbyt is probably knocked out of the Super Prestige for the overall. Then it's time to throw some shade on Rijnkamp. Rijnkamp also used words against Elie Iserbyt, but these words are not official. It's very easy to guess what these words were about, something regarding the best friends of Snow White. We are not going to write down these exact words because they hurt Elie Iserbyt a lot. He hears these words since his childhood. They've been chasing him years after year, cross after cross. They have created a trauma for him. Every interview that Iserbyt is talking about the influence that this has had, we need to scrap these words after he has spoken them. We need to do this on one side to not open any old wounds, and on the other side to protect Iserbyt from himself. I think that this is a very weird paragraph for a journalist to write, that he needs to protect Iserbyt from his own words. Almost like this is being written by the Paul Sauze media department. Then they spread more shade on Kamp. Kamp knows what these words mean to Iserbyt and blah blah blah. Does Kamp just use this at the weakest moment to get his revenge from being sacked by the team? What do we see here? We see that they are defending Iserbyt despite the facts not being there. Kamp has denied insulting Iserbyt before the crash. That's not written down anywhere. If you go to the HBO stream, you can watch it without commentary, and you just have the microphone sounds along the course. And Issam, you and I have listened to that a number of times. We tweeted it as well. If you listen there, you can just know what he said. After the incident, well after, Iserbyt has already walked away, is putting his chain back on. Kamp calls him a fucking dwarf. What do you make from all of this?
I think Alpecin left the opportunity for the Belgian media, or at least some, to spin this into a sort of a hate crime against Iserbyt, and Iserbyt is someone that we should feel sorry for, and it's only because of Iserbyt that he got the suspension. And there is a case to be made for him being used as an example from the UCI that these type of events do not happen in the sport. But he did it. He did it without any provocations whatsoever from Kamp. We have heard it. Was it smart from Kamp to say what he said? No, but I can totally understand his frustration when that happened. As I said, he did a hell of a job to respond the way he did. I have to say that when the incident happened, I was a bit scared of the spinning that would be done by the media, especially the Belgian media, to be honest, because internationally it got the attention it deserved and also the perspective it deserved. This is something that you can expect in a way. He's a Belgian national champion. As you said, Paul Sauze definitely did try everything to make sure that he comes out of this somewhat good. And they, in my opinion, have kind of succeeded with the media in Belgium at least. Internationally, they're probably not going to succeed whatsoever because everybody saw what happened. that's something that happens. He's a Belgian rider. He has the right people behind him. The team really helped him well in this regard. Alpecin left the opportunity for this to be spinned in the way they're doing it right now. And you could even hear it in the Belgian commentary that we listened to. They were quite positive. It was almost as if someone that, was coming back from a horrendous injury or some sort, or didn't deserve anything that came his way. I think that was a bit twisted, I have to say. And I think that this article is also not really... It doesn't really have the right tone. It doesn't really have the right idea of what the suspension is all about. And look, it's they spinned it well, I have to say, and we're going to see how it will end up eventually. But I'm kind of getting tired of this whole subject, to be honest.
I agree that we should try and leave it behind us, but the reason that I do bring it up again is because exactly of what you said. In this podcast, I try and give a Belgian perspective, and I know the same goes for you, of things that don't necessarily make it outside of the Belgian media. And this is an example of that, and it's quite an important one because it can help our listeners understand, I hope, the way that many Belgians are looking at this case, because those perspectives, once again, just like in the Toon Aert situation, don't at all match up. And just to conclude this segment on Iserbyt, to give a further understanding of it, I can go through the rest of the article in summary as well, which goes in on the hate that Iserbyt got. Iserbyt got a lot of hate on different news forums, including our own newspaper. And how is it possible that Wout van Aert gets the positive reactions for everything he does and Iserbyt gets negative reactions regardless of what he does? Van Aert is in The Masked Singer. Everybody says, whoa, what a family guy. Imagine if Iserbyt does it. The same TV program would now be overloaded with reactions as, whoa, doesn't he have anything better to do with his life? When Van der Poel comes to cyclocross in his Lamborghini, whoa, Van der Poel, cool guy, look at his car. When Iserbyt did it in a Ferrari, everybody was like, wow, what a jerk Iserbyt is. So regarding the hate, I kind of see where they're coming from. He did get a lot of hate. Some people were insulting him. Other people were calling for lifelong suspensions, which I think were out of place. And to also pull it to our own platform, Iserbyt got a lot of hate comments in the reel that I collaborated on with Eurosport. I try and moderate our comments, but in this case I don't have moderation powers because Eurosport posted the reel and they don't moderate any of their comments. And those things are annoying for Iserbyt. I get that they annoy him and that they mean a lot to him and that he doesn't like it, but back to the piece in the paper, they eventually boil it down to Iserbyt is smart, he's studied law even though he didn't finish it, and he's just smart and he knows it and he's been in the attention too much. And what it for them boils down to is the fact that he is from the Texas of Flanders, where people work hard to get what they deserve but like to reward their hard work with luxury, and that's not something that other places in Flanders do. But to me, that's the wrong conclusion. I've said it before. The reason that these reactions towards Iserbyt are different than towards Van der Poel and Van Aert are because he doesn't have the same results as them. Iserbyt has the words in the past, I will beat Van Aert and Van der Poel. I will be with them this year. I'm going to make that step. I'm going to race the U23 World Championships in Bogense to break that record. I'm racing the Junior World Championships in Tabor as favorite. He loses. Oh, but it was because my mechanics messed up my tires. The tires I wanted were still at the camper van. Like all these things, these comments for years and years and years, they've added up, leading to a way that people view Iserbyt as a person who doesn't live up to the big words he has. And that's, I think, at the core of this problem. I will once again say that Iserbyt behind the scenes is a very different guy, but I understand the perspective people have of him because they only know what he says on TV and in the media. So that makes a lot of sense. What he should be doing is just speak like he did today. Today he said only the right things in the interviews. He said, and I don't believe him, I don't believe any of this, but he said, oh no, I just thought about this as every other race. But you were super eager to win. I want to win every race. I'm motivated for every race. Sticking to talk like that is what maybe will get people to change your mind on them, but then this incident hasn't helped him at all. Good. I think enough of that. The other funny thing this morning was, next to this pace of Iserbyt, there were 10 articles that Wout van Aert was in The Masked Singer. That was quite funny to see, was quite a big deal. It's one of the most popular TV programs actually in Belgium. So yeah, that was fun to see Van Aert in there. But let's go back to Heerde, to the racing, Issam, because there was plenty to talk about. The women's race, well, I say plenty to talk about. How much can we say about the women's race? Inge van der Heijden had the fastest start. Alvarado had a bad start. She was chasing the first lap and the second lap. It only really got better once she went into the pits to change tires. She switched from the slick profile to the typhoon profile, and when she was switched, in no time she joined the leaders. She was in the leading group with Inge van der Heijden and Laura Verdonschot. An attack in the penultimate lap by Alvarado saw her drop those two to take her third victory of the season. Second place went to Inge van der Heijden, who distanced Verdonschot in the final lap, with Verdonschot taking third. I would like to spend an equal amount of time talking about the women as we did about the men, but I don't see how we can do that, Issam. There really wasn't much more to Alvarado's win than that she was simply the strongest today. She said she didn't have the best legs and was happy to win on economic mode, and I think that tells you all you need to know. She was the best, and once she sorted her tires out, there was nothing that could be done against her.
No, absolutely, and I think she never really panicked. Yeah, Mature Ride did what she had to do. The difference was there, and she did what she had to do, I think. And that is basically that, I would say. And a strong ride confirms that the form is good, and it's gonna be interesting to see how that will develop. Obviously, because her start of the season has been great, and I think that I agree somewhat with what Roodhoof was saying during the race, that he's interested in to see if this is going to be something that she can hold on for over the course of the season, the form, and maybe even improve on. And I think that is indeed going to be interesting. It's the start of the season. We should not forget there is still a lot coming our way, and it's going to be interesting to see if she will be able then to perform similarly and in the same fashion in a way. And I think that is going to be a question that I will have at least for some part of the season.
I think she should be able to do it. We've seen it in the past, and of course I think he was mostly referring to will Van Empel improve, what will Pieterse do. Pieterse was here in Heerde, her sister was racing, she did a few laps in the pre-ride just for fun. In case you missed it in our midweek episode, she will be starting her season in the middle of December, either in Herentals or Namur. Alvarado did what was expected from her, and I think that goes for most riders on the podium. I mean, Van der Heijden and Verdonschot, both of them were riders that we expected on this course. We expected them to be better than Bakker. They're both good. Maybe you would have expected Verdonschot to finish second, seeing the sand, but the sand wasn't really a big point of difference on this course. The only thing I thought was worth mentioning for Verdonschot was that despite her good start to the season, she apparently even had higher expectations for herself, because she said she's been struggling with the feeling. She's not feeling it, whatever that means. I mean, she has 6 wins, 4 in the UK, 2 in Spain, has a 3rd place in Essen, a 3rd place here in Heerde, 5th in Ruddervoorde and 9th in Woerden. That's a more than solid start to the season for her, so I don't really know if that's deserved, but maybe she's just feeling pressure or wants to do even better than where she left off last year, but we'll see. I think Verdonschot needs to be patient, because once the courses get muddy, once it suits her a bit more, we should see her a bit further to the front. I think if we look at the entire top 10, Issam, Alvarado, Van der Heijden, Verdonschot, Bakker, Koppens in 5th, Van Sinai in 6th, Peters in 7th, Sanne Rijs in 8th, Puk Langenbarg in 9th, and Mekabaka in 10th. I wonder if you have anything or anybody you still want to discuss from the women's race, because the field wasn't that deep.
No, and I have to say that the surprises weren't really there, right? It kind of got in its place, and there's not really much to say. I'm struggling to find if I can really point something out, but it is a difficult field to talk about because it was not a really deep start list that we got. But I think overall, it's for me at least, the eyes are going to be more on tomorrow, and hopefully we'll get a race in which the field will be a little bit deeper, as it looks to be. and the racing will also be a little bit more interesting and less predictable.
Yeah, it should be. It should be a good day of racing tomorrow. I have a few short comments I can make. Nette Koppens, 5th. I've said it before in one of the earlier podcasts. She's in some way affiliated to the De Keuster Bouwpunt team. And I would expect them to capitalize on that. She's on a Bianchi bike. She's doing quite well. She's still a U23. Belgium doesn't have many female talents, so they should give her a shot. She's beating Xaye van Sinai, who's just 1 year younger than her by 30 seconds, so that was encouraging. Maybe I would have expected a bit more from Sinai, but on the other hand, Sinai, it was her second race of the season after Ardøya, so I think Van Sinai is building into the season. It was good to see Langenbarg do well, getting into it in the start with Van der Heijden. Good for a first year U23. And then, Sanne Laurijsen maybe beating Kabaka is a bit of a surprise, but we'll keep the junior talk for, I would say, the preview, but then I would be lying, because Issam, I want to take you for a trip to the Czech Republic, to Kolin, for the third round already of the HSF System Cup. Before you think, why am I going to talk about all these riders, just bear with me. Kristina Zemanova took the win by 9 seconds, and then there's a bunch of juniors from the Czech Republic. Second place was for Barbora Bukovska. Judith Kahl was third. Then we saw Gladanova start her season with a fourth place. Then 3 juniors, Amalie Gottwaldova, Hanka Vikova and Lucy Grohova. And 8th place went to Katerina Duderova. Before we just talk about all these talents, Issam, what do you think about Zemanova? She took a week off. She rode to recover from the effects of a COVID infection. She rode about long COVID. She won in his Linko a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago to be exact. She won by 6 seconds. She said she didn't like the feeling, so she took time off. What do you think then now? Because now she wins, but by 9 seconds.
Improvement, right? It's all in the small margins. No, I don't know how she maybe entered that race. Maybe she entered it with a different mindset. Yeah, it's a bit tricky, because if you are not very happy with the form and you take some time off to then return racing again and you don't really see that much of an improvement, considering that we think that there is not really that much of an improvement. It's all about the feeling in the end and not about the gaps. Yeah, that's obviously not the most encouraging thing that you can have. It's early on in the season, so she will have time to get into a rhythm. But it could also be a little bit worrying, because maybe the time that you took off was not enough. Maybe you need to take a little more time off. How much and how are you going to do your training? That's all going to be something that you have to discuss with the surroundings, and then you have to see how you get through it. And it's a difficult situation, but if I can just say on the talents that the Czech Republic, especially on the women's side, have, it's crazy, really crazy.
Oh, absolutely. That's out of hand, I would even say. But back to Zemanova for a bit here, before we can go a little bit in depth, and we'll talk more in depth even when we come to the preview for the European Championships. I think Zemanova wants to make a play for those European Championships, and that she's racing now and will race next week, hoping to get a medal in the U23 category, which I would say is within reach. Even if she's not at her best, she might not beat Bentveld and she might not beat Schreiber, but she should still be third favorite, at least by my reckoning. And then about the talents, I mean, we see Gladanova. I think she is also looking to make a play for those European Championships. Gladanova is a first year U23 now. She's not racing for Visma Lease Bike yet. Last year we saw her race a bunch of elite races as well. She was quite often beaten by only Zemanova. I think that Gladanova at the moment is not in the best form. She's taken a rest period after Road World Championships, is only building back. Again, if we look at the riders that are around there's so many junior talents here. Buskova, she finishes second, first, second. She has an elite win, admittedly without Zemanova, as a first-year junior. I'm going to write her down as the favorite for the U19, the Junior Woman European title. Gottwaldova is a second year. For reference, she was 9th at the World Championships last year. She was 4th in Namur. They are beating, quite comfortably, Katerina Dudarova. She was 5th at the World Championships last year. Admittedly, that was an outlier for Dudarova, but still, they're beating her. And last year she was roughly 10th place in the World Cups. 10th, 12th. That's kind of where she belonged. This is just... I mean, I'm quite excited about this. I want to see this next week, Issam, because they'll be bringing 4 riders that can compete for medals. And I think that's quite exciting. And clearly, the project that they went into a couple of years ago when we recorded a podcast with Petr Dlask is starting to pay off.
Yeah, who would have thought that if you really work hard, have a plan, and invest in it, you actually could get some talent out of it, huh? No, but I have to say that obviously you have to take in mind that they are very young, and those type of events are going to be a little bit different. So they have no pressure. They can prove us, I wouldn't say wrong or right, but they can really show themselves there. And I mean, if I am owner of a team or in the management or some sort, I would definitely try to get at least one of these girls in my team, take care of her in terms of the bikes and all that, and see what comes out of it. Because I definitely think that if you are early on this, you never know what you can get out of this. So it's interesting to say the least, what is going on, what is happening, and we're going to follow it, and we're going to see our first test of it, I guess, in the European Championships, which is going to be a great test for these young girls and ladies to show themselves.
Let's talk more in depth in our preview for the European Championships, which we'll record this week. I'll just wrap up by giving you the other results. Michal Boros won the men race there in Kolin ahead of Marek Konva and Václav Jezek. In Italy, there was actually televised racing. You can watch this on YouTube. The race in Brugherio, Gioele Bertolini took the win ahead of Federico Seolin and Christian Colmielli. This race, as said, was on YouTube and it was muddy. Carlotta Borello easily won the Women Elite race by over a minute and a half on Beatrice Fontana. Lucia Bramati ended 3rd there. Then there was also racing in Estonia, where the national championships took place. Madis Mikkels from Intermarché Wanty took the title ahead of Marcus Pajour and Marcus Maebio. That is a very tough name to pronounce. The Women Elite title went to Marie-Lise Mottus ahead of Elisabeth Ebras and Anna-Britt Parants. There is more racing today, but there's a lot of night racing, a lot of night action. A night race in Les Franques in Spain, a night race in Aarhus, Denmark, and then there's day racing, but night for us in Really Rad in the US, and we will cover those results in tomorrow's podcast when we cover Overijse. Issam, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, and looking forward to Overijse.
The mother of all crosses, it should be fun. See you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.